What would it feel like to be truly, deeply happy, regardless of your circumstances? Did you know that happiness is a choice and not a result? That you can create your life on purpose? Join us now to learn more. This is the Time to Rise and Thrive radio show. And here's your host, mindset coach and facilitator of change, Jackie Mott.
Well, hello. It is a beautiful day here in London, Ontario. Happy Friday. This is Jackie Mott of Phoenix Coaching, and welcome to the very first episode of Time to Rise and Thrive on Inspired Choices Network. I am your host, Jackie Mott. I am based in London, Ontario, and I have a company called Phoenix Coaching, and I am so happy to be with you today. When Christine and I first talked about doing this show, we were planning to start it in July, but with this COVID thing, we decided to move it up and get it going early. It's kind of a crazy time right now, isn't it? And I know that a lot of people are really struggling, which is why I wanted to launch the show now instead of waiting, because the tools I'm going to share with you on this show can help you when things get tough. I also want to let you know that I've decided to make a special offer based on the COVID, based on the launch of the show. It seems like the perfect time to do that, and I'll share more about that after the second break. So the first thing that I would like to do is give huge gratitude to Christine and Malika of the Inspired Choices Network team. I'm going to tell you, technology is not my thing. And these ladies have just been so instrumental in making this possible, because without them, I would have been completely lost. So they have really helped me get this thing going for you. And I just want to say a huge thank you to both Malika and Christine for all of your help. And now that you know that technology isn't my thing, I'm going to tell you that there might be a bit of a learning curve. So I'm going to ask you for a bit of grace. And, as we go along, I will learn how to do this well. And if there are a few bumps along the road, it really only adds to the flavor and fun, doesn't it? If you would like to participate in the show, if you have a comment or a question or just something you'd like to add to the conversation, please feel free to call in or to Skype in. The numbers for the U.S. are 815-880-8255. In Canada, you can call 613-800-8736, or you can Skype us at Inspired Choices Network. Today's show is called What Do You Tell Yourself When You're Not Listening? And we're going to talk about how your subliminal soundtrack, well, what it actually is, first of all, and how it affects you. But before we get into that, I'd like to tell you a bit about me and where this idea came from. So, I have not always been a speaker. In fact, I used to be quite afraid to get up on stages or share my story. I kind of had this idea that I didn't really have a whole lot of value to say. I didn't think that it would add anything to the world or to the people who occupy it with me. And so I was actually kind of a quiet person. I kept my thoughts to myself in a lot of cases. And something happened a few years ago that changed that. So April 16th, 2012, my sister Jenny was killed in a car accident. And when that happened, it really threw my whole world into a big tailspin. I really didn't know what to do with myself. I went into a really deep place of grief and found it very, very difficult to function. What I learned in the process of healing through that was that I had actually not dealt with a lot of the things that caused me some deep grief, the losses and all of that stuff that causes us to hurt. I had, like a lot of people, sort of pushed it down and pushed it down and pushed it down and pushed it down. But when we lost my sister and when I went into that place, there was something inside me that just sort of broke open. And when that happened, everything just started to come out. And, it's sort of like when you're trying to hold water in your hand, you can only hold so much water in your hand before it starts to spill over or slide through your fingers or whatever. And I just couldn't hold it back anymore. So what I started to do was really become a seeker. I started to look into therapy and alternative healing methods and all kinds of different stuff. And what I learned in that journey is really a lot of the stuff that I'm going to share with you on this show on Time to Rise and Thrive over the next several months. I'm going to be sharing a lot of those things, the tips and tricks and whatnot that I learned as I was going through this healing process. What inevitably happened was somebody asked me to speak for a group and talk to them about this loss and about this pain and about this healing process. And I did. And it was a small group. And then, somebody else asked me to speak for their group. And then somebody else asked me to speak for their group. And eventually I was speaking for, larger groups. I think that the largest audience that I have presented in front of is about 400 people so far. And I hope to make that bigger. But what I learned in that process is because I don't speak from a place of, here's my plan, here's my presentation. I don't memorize things. I don't any of the stuff that, you're supposed to do, right? I don't do that. What I do is I share. I share from my heart. And what I've learned is sharing from my heart space actually touches people, sometimes very deeply, and it actually helps people. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that this was a gift that I had for a very long time. So I would have been in my 40s before I finally figured that piece out. And then after that, I decided that I was going to just kind of do more of this because it makes me so happy when I see somebody start to shift and become happier or take control of their life or whatever the case may be. So that's basically my background. You're going to learn an awful lot about me because a lot of what I'm going to share are my personal stories and the learnings that I have achieved, I guess, as I've gone through life and faced the things that I've had to face. So as we go through the shows, you're going to get to know me quite well. So yesterday, I was on Facebook, and I found a quote from Alice in Wonderland, and I think it really fits with what we're talking about here. So what do you tell yourself when you're not listening? So there's a scene in Alice in Wonderland, in the book and, of course, in the movie, where the Cheshire Cat is, I believe, up in a tree. And Alice says, "Would you tell me, please, which way I ought to go from here?" "That depends a good deal on where you want to get to," said the cat. "I don't much care where," said Alice. "Then it doesn't matter which way you go," said the cat. "So as long as I get somewhere," Alice added as an explanation. "Oh, you're sure to do that," said the cat, "if you only walk long enough." So that's what happens when we're on autopilot, right? And one of the things that really happens to a lot of us, we get so bloody busy with our lives and we just kind of go on autopilot. We get through every day. We do all of the things that we're supposed to do, make sure the kids get fed, make sure the bills get paid, make sure that we get to work on time, all of that stuff. And it becomes a very mundane sort of thing that we do. And if we don't realize that we're doing it, then it just seems normal. But at a certain point, when you start to have these awakenings, when you have a moment like I had with losing my sister, because it's really true. We don't know what somebody or what something is like to experience until we actually face it, until we deal with it ourselves. And so, I'd heard a million times over the years people say, "Oh, life's short and it can be over in an instant," and all of that kind of stuff. And I never really appreciated it until that day when I realized that it really can be. She was driving to work that morning. She was on her way. She had so many things to do with her life. I know because we'd talked about some of them, right? And just in a second, it was all over. So that caused a whole process for me, a whole shift and transformation in my world. And now 8 years later, I sit here and my world looks completely different than it did, because what it did was it woke me up. And that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about mindset. We're going to talk about mindfulness and what we can do to get off autopilot, and start to shift into a place where we are actually creating our lives, where we're consciously making choices for ourselves, for the people we care about. And from that place of, what is right for me? What am I doing here? So we're going to ask a lot of questions as we go through this today and as we go through further messages. The plan is that the next few episodes are going to be very much about this subliminal soundtrack. So the subliminal soundtrack is that thing that plays in the back of your mind all day, every day, and it causes you to make decisions and choices, whether you're aware of them or you're not. Just before we go to break here, I want to just read to you what the show description was today. So it says, what do you tell yourself when you're not listening? Did you know that there's a subliminal soundtrack playing in the back of your mind every minute of every day, that you're listening to those messages without even realizing it, and your life is being affected by what they tell you? Your subliminal soundtrack affects every area of your life. The decisions you make, your relationships, your opinion of yourself, your emotions, even your money flows. If those messages are positive and supportive, you likely have a positive view of yourself and make decisions that support that way of being. But what happens if those messages are full of misinformation, limiting beliefs, or lies that you've bought into, believing them to be true? So I've written an article that I'm just going to give you some directions really quickly on how to find that. I have a website. It is phoenixcoach.ca. So that's Phoenix Coach, PhoenixCoach.ca. And if you go there, right on the homepage, on the right-hand side, you will find a box where you can just sort of fill in a bit of information, and then we will send you this article. It's called 3 Easy Ways to Reset Your Subliminal Soundtrack. Good Lord. And there's a whole lot of other information on the website there, but if you would like to download that, I'm just going to really encourage you to have a look, because it goes through some really easy steps on how to recognize what those thoughts are and how to start to reprogram them, because that's the good news. Even if your subliminal soundtrack is full of limiting beliefs and full of lies that you have been told and you believe to be true, you can do something about that. And that is really my mission, at least for the next few shows. And we're going to talk about a whole lot of other stuff. But now I see it's getting to time for our first break. When we come back, we will talk more about these messages and the first steps that you can take in resetting your subliminal soundtrack. So we will be right back.
What do you tell yourself when you're not listening? This question came to Jackie Mott when she was trying to find peace and purpose in the wake of tragedy. She began to understand that a lot of her pain and choices had been the result of how she perceived herself and her place in the world. And she set about creating a new subliminal soundtrack that would support her in creating a life of abundance, joy, and fulfillment. To learn more about how she did that and how you can do the same, join Jackie on her radio show, Time to Rise and Thrive, every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Central, 11 a.m. Mountain, and 10 a.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message? The world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email becomeahost@inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is Time to Rise and Thrive radio show with mindset coach and facilitator of change, Jackie Mott. To participate in the program, call in the U.S. 815-880-8255, Canada 613-800-8736, or Skype us at Inspired Choices Network. For more information, visit phoenixcoach.ca, where you can follow Phoenix Coaching online. Now back to the program.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. I am Jackie Mott. This is Time to Rise and Thrive on Inspired Choices Network. And today we are talking about, what do you tell yourself when you're not listening? And remember, if you'd like to comment or you have a question, you can either write it into the chat room or you can call in. The numbers are on your screen, and you can also Skype in. So if you got anything you'd like to add to the conversation, we would love to hear it. So, before we went to break, we were talking about our subliminal soundtrack and how we can reprogram it. Again, there's a free download on phoenixcoach.ca called 3 Easy Ways to Reset Your Subliminal Soundtrack. And then if that speaks to you, please go and get that article and feel free to share it with anyone you think it might help. You can also follow my page on Phoenix Coaching on Facebook. And I'm putting up, I started doing this almost a month ago now. I started doing daily videos called Mindful Moments, and it was as a result of the COVID thing, of course, and just wanting people to have something a little bit positive to put into their day. So if you'd like to check that out, that would be a lot of fun too. So a couple of days ago on my Mindful Moments, I posted about starting this radio show and how excited I was, and also a little bit nervous because it's a new thing, right? And so I had a lot of friends that commented and called me and sent messages and whatever. And one of them yesterday surprised me. So my friend Kate called, and she said, you know, this question that you've asked, this, what do you tell yourself when you're not listening? She said, I found it really intriguing. Tell me about that. So we talked a little bit about that. And because I know Kate so well, we've known each other for, 15 years or more. Because I know her so well, I was able to say, well, you know, we talked about this and this and this, and I'm not going to out her here because that's just not cool. But I will share with you that we talked about some of those specific things that I know have been part of her story and how she might go about starting to change that. So there's a really simple process, and it's outlined in that article that I've suggested you have a look at. And the first thing that we need to do is we really need to understand. We need to understand what those messages are. So one of the things that a lot of people struggle with, and I'm not going to be outing anybody's personal information by sharing this, money issues. A lot of people struggle with money issues. So I want to focus just a little bit on that because it's just something that it can change so much in your life if you can start to shift the relationship that you have with money. So I'm going to be really sort of specific in this because I think that will help you. So one of the things I've heard over and over and over again in my life is this message about money is the root of all evil. And I got to tell you, when I was sort of going through this process of learning how to reprogram my own way of being, to reprogram my own subliminal soundtrack, this was one of the things that kept coming up for me, was this money thing, and money is the root of all evil. So what I want to share with you is that statement that we have heard probably 1,000,000 times over the course of our lives is actually a misquote. The actual quote is from the Bible. It's from 1 Timothy 6:10. And the quote actually is, "For the love of money is the root of all evil." Now think about that for a second. Money is a thing. Money is an object in the same way that, the chair that I'm sitting on is an object. The computer that I'm working on is an object. A leaf is an object. Money is the same thing, right? It's a thing. It's not capable of being evil or bad or good or anything. It's not capable of that. It's capable of helping us in our world. It's basically a tool. It enables trade between people. It makes it possible for us to pay our bills. And that's really all it is. So when we assign this idea that having money is evil into our subconscious, what do you think happens? Do you think it might impact the way that you feel about having money? Do you think it might impact your ability to hold on to money, or how much you might be willing or comfortable with earning in your life? It's something that is so benign, and yet it can be so crippling. That one idea can be so crippling. So another example for me when I was working through my process was rich people are greedy and selfish. Wow. Rich people are what? And where in the hell did I get that idea? Like, honestly, look at the world that we live in. And I've got a list. I've got a list of a few people, just a few people. What about J.K. Rowling? J.K. Rowling actually gave so much money away that she went from being a billionaire to a millionaire, if I'm not incorrect. I believe that was the figure that I heard. John Bon Jovi, he started JBJ Soul Kitchen, where people are able to pay what they can afford for a meal, or they're even able to pay for their meal with their time. Oprah Winfrey, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett. There are so many famous rich people, who have given away so much money to help others. There are people that start their own not-for-profits or they support a not-for-profit, or I know people personally who take food and items that are needed to homeless people right here in London, Ontario. They collect these things and they go and they distribute them to the people who need them. So how do we pay for those things, guys? How do we pay for the food? How do we pay for the clothing? How do we pay for anything, the shelter, anything? It all costs money. So when we're addressing these ideas, it's really important for us to get really clear on what they are. And it's more about what they are than about why they are. Because sometimes the why can take us in a totally different direction, and that may or may not be helpful. But it's really important to get very clear on what we are telling ourselves. And then it's important to take it one step further from there, because we need to start to fill those spots in with what we know to be true. So we know that all of these people that I just mentioned have done amazing things to help so many people. And they've used their money to do that, right? We know that there are probably millions of other wealthy people out there who are doing the same thing, but because they're not famous, we probably have no idea that they're at it, right? We don't know what they're up to. They don't have some great big, film career or musical career that they can stand on, some great big platform that they can stand on and say, hey, here I am and this is what I'm doing, but they're still doing it. And how great is that? So what if we start to shift our way of being with money to start to perceive it from that place of possibilities, What could be created? What could be contributed to the world if we had the money to give? Think about that for just a second. Just sort of let that sit. Let that sit for a second. What could you do that you can't currently do that might help somebody, that might create ease for someone who's suffering? What could you do if you had the money to do that? So you see how there's a bit of a process here that we work through, and it's not actually that hard. It's not that hard to do. It's a matter of choosing to shift how you be in a certain circumstances, the energy and belief systems that you give your attention to. So do you choose to look at something from a place of, man, this is so hard, I never have enough, I can't start saving, I can't go on this vacation, I can't buy myself that thing that I really want? Or do you shift it and go, what would it be like? What would it be like if all of my bills were paid ahead of time and I still had money left over? What would it be like if I could buy that car and drive it? What would it be like if I could take a vacation whenever I felt like it? What would it be like? What would it be like? So there you go. Like, that's sort of one of the next things that's very, very important, is we have to get into our imagination. And how crazy is that, right? Like, we were encouraged to use our imagination when we were kids, but how much do we do that when we get a little bit older and we have all of these responsibilities and we got those bills to pay and, all of that stuff that gets so heavy sometimes, and it really sort of, it can smother that creativity and that imagination, or we can choose to do it anyway. Because, we're adults. We can choose to do whatever the hell we want, really. Within reason. Within reason. And please, remain inside and take care of yourself right now with this COVID thing, because, just because you decide you want to go out, it might not be a safe idea. So, anyway, I'm going to stop talking about COVID because who wants to talk about that? So I see that it is now time for our second break. So this is Jackie Mott, and you are listening to Time to Rise and Thrive on Inspired Choices Network. When we come back, I'm going to share with you, first of all, a very special COVID-19 offer. And we're also going to talk a bit more about how to reprogram your subliminal soundtrack. So I'll see you in a minute.
What do you tell yourself when you're not listening? This question came to Jackie Mott when she was trying to find peace and purpose in the wake of tragedy. She began to understand that a lot of her pain and choices had been the result of how she perceived herself and her place in the world. And she set about creating a new subliminal soundtrack that would support her in creating a life of abundance, joy, and fulfillment. To learn more about how she did that and how you can do the same, join Jackie on her radio show, Time to Rise and Thrive, every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Central, 11 a.m. Mountain, and 10 a.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. This is Time to Rise and Thrive radio show with mindset coach and facilitator of change, Jackie Mott. To participate in the program, call in the U.S. 815-880-8255, Canada 613-800-8736 or Skype us at Inspired Choices Network. For more information, visit phoenixcoach.ca where you can follow Phoenix Coaching online. Now back to the program.
Hello and welcome back. I am Jackie Mott. This is Time to Rise and Thrive on Inspired Choices Network. And before we went to break, I promised that I would share with you a very special COVID-19 offer. So this whole situation, this pandemic, all of the restrictions, social distancing, shutdowns, all of that stuff, it's affecting everybody. And, especially those of us who may struggle with things like depression. It's affecting everybody. We're on lockdown. We can't do an awful lot. So one of the worst things about this is that we also have no idea how long it's going to last or when it's going to be over. We're isolated, and there's a lot of fear and stress flying around, and the media is not helping all that much. So what I decided to do is I'd like to offer a special price on 30-minute sessions for people who are having trouble coping right now or just needing to talk about or work through what they're feeling about this, or really anything else for that matter. These sessions are going to be done on Zoom. So as long as you speak English, we can set it up. And I think on Zoom it usually allows you to record the sessions too. Anyway, the normal pricing for a 30-minute session is $75, but because I know that money isn't flowing all that well for some people right now, I would like to offer them for only $25. So if you would like to take advantage of this offer, please just contact me right now at Jackie@phoenixcoach.ca. Not right now, contact me because I'm on the radio. But right now it'll be through email, and there may well be a link that I'll put up on my website at some point. But right now, that's the way to contact me. And I'm going to create a form that I'll send you, and that'll help me get us started so that we can book the call. Now, I'm sure you can understand that I only have so much time that I can put toward this. So I have to limit the number of calls that I can do for the discounted price. So the discounted price I will offer for up to 10 sessions a week, and I'm expecting them to go quickly. So if you would like to take advantage of this offer, again, it's normally $75. At this time, it will be $25. Please don't wait. Okay. So now that I've told you about that, I'm going to get back to talking about your subliminal soundtrack. So we talked about how important it is to get a handle on what it is that we are telling ourselves, in that thing. What have we bought into? What do we believe to be true? And, some of that stuff is just stuff that we've learned over the course of our lives. I have learned that I am not terribly great with technology. And I need people like Christine and Malika to help me when that stuff comes up. So that's just something that is true for me. And it's not a harmful message. It just is what it is, right? But we want to address the things where we are actually limiting ourselves, where we are actually holding ourselves back and sort of catching ourselves in a box. Those are the things that we want to look at changing. So we're talking about money, right? So we've looked at identifying the actual belief, and then at starting to do the second step. The second step is challenging the belief. And challenging the belief with things that we know are true, right? We know that having money is not, in fact, a bad thing. We know that we need money. We know that we could create different things if we had extra money. And I mean, really, if you were a millionaire, do you think you'd be worrying about whether or not you could pay your phone bill? So what about the ease that could come from having a bit of a different relationship with that money? What would be different in your world, and what energy could you occupy? So we're challenging the belief with things that we know to be true. So when we start to get into that energy, it's very important to really immerse ourselves in it. Like think about immersing yourself in the same way that you would in a hot bath or hot tub or something like that. Oh, a hot spring. Oh my God, if you've ever done that, and if you haven't, oh boy, you should maybe find one and try it, because wow. But it's about that just soaking, steeping. A good cup of tea doesn't happen just because you drop a bag in a boiling water. You have to let it steep a little bit, and that's where the magic really happens. So take a moment and really allow yourself to think about not just, oh, I could go on a vacation. Where would you go? What would you do? Would you go to some place with a lovely beach? Would you maybe go and explore castles or jungles, or like, what would you do? And when you figure that out, how would that feel? And that's your steeping space. How would it feel to walk through that castle that I've always wanted to see? How would it feel to lay on the beach with my kids playing over there in the water and hearing the waves lapping? How would it feel to be there sipping on some nice little tropical drink? How would it feel to be able to drive that car? How would it feel to have all of those things that might turn you on there in front of you that you can play with and you can touch? How would it feel for the wind to be blowing through your hair while you're going Mach 10? How would it feel? How would it feel to live in that neighborhood? How would it feel to be able to make sure that your parents never had to worry about money for the rest of their lives, or your children? How would it feel to set up an organization or even a not-for-profit, or support something that you believe in a way that you've never been able to support it? How would it feel? Very, very important. That's your steeping. And again, that is where the magic happens. Some of us of a certain age might remember a cartoon. Donald Duck had an uncle, I believe, and he was called Scrooge McDuck. And there was a scene on one of my favorite cartoons where Scrooge McDuck jumped into a pool of money, like chock full of money. And he swam around in that, and he was so joyful. There is nothing wrong with having fun with money. There is nothing wrong with having money. So when we start to shift our energy and we start to shift our belief system about this thing that allows us to trade with others, this thing that enables us to gift to other things, other people, other beings. When we start to shift that, what would it feel like to be Scrooge McDuck swimming around in that pool of money? Are you hearing me? Because like that to me just seems like wow. So I'll tell you my thing. I have this little piggy bank, and I call it my funny money because it is, the emoji, the laughing emoji. And every time I think of it, I throw a little bit of money in there, and it grows. Sometimes it grows faster than others. Sometimes money's flowing easier than others. But it's my funny money. And it's not a bad thing to have some sort of an idea, like a target, right? So would you like to go on a trip, or would you like to buy a thing? Would you like to, whatever it is, what would be fun for you? Think about what would be fun, maybe a spa day, or maybe going to that hot springs. maybe going and laying around in that hot springs and just resting and relaxing for a few hours. Oh, that sounds like heaven to me right now. So what is your thing? What is your thing? Figure that out. And then find a spot where you can put an envelope or maybe a piggy bank or whatever, and just throw a little bit of money in there every once in a while. Because even a few cents will add up over time. If you throw $1 in there a day, then at the end of the day, or at the end of the year, you've got $356, $365, whatever. How many days are there in a year? Thank you, Rhonda. 365 days a year. At the end of the year, you're going to have $365 that you would not probably have established had you not done that, right? Because you'd spend it on coffee, or you'd spend it on a bill, or you'd spend it on something. So make it a practice to put that thing, or put a little bit of money, put that little bit of money into the thing that you would like to do. And you might be surprised how quickly it will start to add up. And it might just make you feel a little bit lighter. It might just make you feel a little bit excited. That would be a bad thing, right? Like, getting excited about money, what a terrible thing that would be. All right. So we're getting down to the third step of this whole thing. So as you start to work through these ideas that you have about money or about anything else, these are the things. They can be very, very damaging, but I'm gonna hold off and go there in a few minutes. We're gonna just follow through on the process. So the last step 3 in this thing, is practice makes perfect. So these are deeply, deeply ingrained. These ideas are deeply ingrained in who we are and what we be, and how we do everything in our world. Everything. So step 3 is practice makes perfect. You are very likely going to, as you try to reestablish, try is not the word I want to use there. As you reestablish and reprogram your subliminal soundtrack and the messages that are playing every single day of your life, you're likely going to fall back into old habits. You're likely going to fall back into patterns, and it can be challenging. It can be challenging to make these changes. Now, it is very possible, and with some practice and a little bit of effort, you can absolutely do it. But as you go through this process of reprogramming yourself, you have to sometimes catch yourself. And that's a trick. And you also can't beat yourself up, because if you're me, I'm 48 years old. I've been walking around with some of these ideas for almost 50 years. And wow, I just said that. Oh, yeah. So I have been walking around with these for a very long time. And if you think that I'm just going to wave a magic wand and all of a sudden it's going to change, no, it's going to take a little bit of practice. It's going to take some effort. The trick is that when we catch ourselves going into that space that we used to occupy, going into that belief that we used to occupy, the trick is to catch yourself and stop. Stop it right away, as soon as you can. Do not beat yourself up for going back into your old way of being. Just acknowledge it. Just acknowledge, oh, crap, I did it again. Okay, what do I know to be true? And then remind yourself of what we just talked about. Having money is a good thing. If I want to go on that vacation, I need money. And how much fun would it be for me to run around with my kids on the beach? Yay! All of these people that they're rich, but man, they're generous and they're kind and thoughtful. Do that every time you find yourself sliding back into that old way of thinking, sliding back into those old habits. It's not that hard to do once you get the hang of it, but it can be a bit tricky at first. So practice makes perfect is the third step in changing the message that are playing on your subliminal soundtrack. And we are now at a time where we need to go for our last break. So this is Jackie. You're listening to Time to Rise and Thrive. And we are on Inspired Choices Network. When we come back, we're going to talk about some other stuff, not just money, but some other stuff having to do with reprogramming your subliminal soundtrack and what you're telling yourself when you're not listening. So we'll be right back in just a moment.
What do you tell yourself when you're not listening? This question came to Jackie Mott when she was trying to find peace and purpose in the wake of tragedy. She began to understand that a lot of her pain and choices had been the result of how she perceived herself and her place in the world. And she set about creating a new subliminal soundtrack that would support her in creating a life of abundance, joy, and fulfillment. To learn more about how she did that and how you can do the same, join Jackie on her radio show, Time to Rise and Thrive, every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Central, 11 a.m. Mountain, and 10 a.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email becomeahost@inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is Time to Rise and Thrive radio show with mindset coach and facilitator of change, Jackie Mott. To participate in the program, call in the U.S. 815-880-8255, Canada 613-800-8736, or Skype us at Inspired Choices Network. For more information, visit phoenixcoach.ca, where you can follow Phoenix Coaching online. Now back to the program.
Hello and welcome back. This is Jackie Mott on Time to Rise and Thrive on Inspired Choices Network. And now we're going to get into our last segment of today's show. What do you tell yourself when you're not listening? So we talked a little bit about the money stuff. And the money stuff is something that a lot of people struggle with. But there are some things that are really quite harmful that we have bought into. Now, the thing of it is that these are ideas that we've been taught by people, sometimes by people that we trust. There are also things that we have learned just from living. And the thing of it is that a lot of these things are simply not true. So we need to acknowledge the things that aren't true, challenge them with the things that are true, and then practice and continue going from there. So some of us have experienced some really tough stuff in our lives, and we can arrive at these ideas that we're not really good. You know, we're not worthy, we're not smart, we're not pretty, we're not, right? And those things can hit us in some places that are really hurtful. And it's very important for us to address those things. So I found a quote. I'm going to share it with you. Now, it's attributed to Einstein, but there's something online that says, I don't know, there's something online that says that it might not have been him. I don't know who said it, but it's brilliant. So we'll just go with this, okay? It says, everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it's stupid. Think about that for just a second, will you? If you base your belief system on inaccuracies and on all the things that you can't do, what does that mean? What does that mean for you? I guarantee you, because I have a very strong spiritual belief system. I'm not really a church-going lady, but I do have a very strong belief system. And one of my beliefs, which has really proved itself true over and over and over again, is that each one of us is special and unique and beautiful and amazing. Every one of us. We all have gifts. You know, maybe you make the best apple pie that anyone has ever tasted. Maybe you are somebody who, when people come into contact with you, they feel important. Maybe you're someone who, I don't know, maybe you're an artist and you create beautiful pictures or you create beautiful music. If you base your system, your belief system about yourself on that you maybe didn't do so well in school, or that you weren't so pretty in high school, or that somebody told you once that you were dumb. You know, if you base your belief system in your life on those things, we're never going to get to see you shine. We are never going to get to see that brilliance and that beauty come out. And man, that is the stuff, that is the juicy, yummy stuff that makes me love what I do so much, is seeing people come out of their shells and start to see their brilliance and their beauty for exactly what it is. It is absolutely amazing to watch someone light up. And I've got stories coming out my ears about seeing that light come on for people. And we'll talk about some of those stories as the shows progress. So, it looks like we're getting right close to the end of the show here. So I'm going to share a little bit more information with you before they shut me down. I am so glad that you have been with me today. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for joining us on Inspired Choices Network to hear my very first ever radio show. Yay! Thank you for being with me today. Again, I'm going to invite you to go to phoenixcoach.ca to download your free copy of 3 Easy Ways to Reset Your Subliminal Soundtrack, and share that with whomever you like. And if you feel like taking advantage of one of the 30 sessions for only $25, please send me an email to jackie@phoenixcoach.ca. Next Friday, we'll be back for our second show. Yay! Please join me again. It will be 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Central, 11 Mountain, and 10 Pacific time. Next week's show, I spent some time creating a schedule because I'm one of those people. And next week's show is going to be called Adoring Your Own Damn Self. We're going to be talking about learning to appreciate those unique and beautiful things that make up the amazing creature that you are, so that you can start to really appreciate yourself, so you can start to show up differently in your world, so you can start to be more of a contribution to the people that you love. All of that yummy, juicy stuff. Because when we start to recognize what makes us, unique and beautiful and amazing, oh my God, does your world change? Oh my God. And that's when you really can step into this space where you're creating your life on purpose. Creating your life on purpose. And we are just about out of time here, so thank you again so much for joining me today. For the very first ever Time to Rise and Thrive, I'm so grateful for your time, and I hope that you've learned something that will help you see things differently. So I will see you next Friday. I am Jackie Mott, and it's time to rise and thrive.
Thank you for joining us for Time to Rise and Thrive radio show. Jackie Mott will return next Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 12 noon Central, 11 a.m. Mountain, and 10 a.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. We hope you'll join us. Have a fantastic week, and remember, it's your time to rise and thrive.